Right. So we are live now. Ashima, you can start. Thank you, everybody. Wish you a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on mapping the future of India's electric mobility. So I welcome our esteemed panelists, Mr. Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala. He's president at IITM Research Park, IITM Incubation Cell, and RTBI. Mr. Amitabh Saran, founder and CEO of AltiGreen. Ms. Prabhjot Kaur, co-founder Esmito. Ms. Chaitanya Kanuri, she's Associate Director at Electric Mobility WRI
Ashima,
India.
you're not very clear. I don't know why your voice is not very clear. Needs to be louder a bit.
Okay, I'll speak a bit louder. And lastly, we have Mr. Varun Chaturvedi, who's the founder and CEO of Volttic. So I'll just give a brief context of the session. So India's EVs are evolving from a niche novelty to a common sight in most tier 1 cities, but the share on the road compared to non-EVs remain relatively small at about 0.6% of the total vehicles. In the entire vehicle category, three-wheelers have the maximum percentage of EVs, that is 10 to 12%. The EV segment in India is expected to grow exponentially over the coming years, led by the central government initiatives that are being formulated to meet targets such as Paris Agreement 2015, Second Automotive Mission Plan 2016, and faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles to Scheme 2019. So while the Paris Agreement focuses on reducing emission intensities, AMP aims to elevate the Indian automobile industry to global standards. FAME 2 targets to increase EV penetration in automobile sales by 2030. So the second phase of FAME, a 3-year subsidy program with a budget of 10,000 crore, aims at supporting the electrification of public and shared transportation, around 7,000 electric and hybrid buses, 5 lakh electric 3 vehicles, 55,000 electric 4-wheeler passenger cars, and 1 million electric 2-wheelers. So the key takeaways that we are expecting from this webinar is India's progress in EV sector vis-a-vis the world, addressing import dependence in the sector, impact of government initiatives and policies on growth, industry expectations from FAME 3, and future growth prospects and challenges. So to start the session, I would like to invite the panelists to discuss the evolution of India's electric vehicle sector over the years and provide insights into the future outlook, taking into account government policies and support. So to start with, I would request Mr. Jhunjhunwala to proceed with his views first. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I'll like to share a few slides. You have to enable my slide sharing.
Yes, sir, doing it. 1 second.
Still not enabled. Okay. I hope my slides are visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, they are visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I have very few slides. I have just a few minutes. I want to just point out what the current situation in India is. I remember that in 2015, we started. I had gone from IIT Madras to as a principal advisor to Shri Piyush Goyal, who was the Minister of Power. And essentially, my job was to get industry, academia, and government committed to EVs. And by 2015, the initial commitment did come. There was some opposition from some existing auto manufacturers that continued, and to some extent still continues. That created some problems in standardizing charges. We did one quick standardization through a DHI committee, but later on, the problem continued. Similarly, we had taken battery swapping as some kind of standard, and this was also, there was a lot of pulls and pushes from different industry and from different government departments, and therefore it was not fully done. But I find that it took a long time to take off. It was slowly moving. One can always count individual success, but in terms of total numbers, was moving very, very slowly till you see last year, late last year, early this year. And suddenly the number start moving up very, very rapidly. You can see this table where you see this green, this number. And from there onwards, it has just gone on like this. Basically, I feel two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheeler electrification is all underway. There is not much of a problem there now. Larger freight transportation may require other technologies. We will talk more about it. Nothing to stop small vehicles. Electric two-wheeler and three-wheeler will dominate market by FY 26, 25, 26. Right now, you will see plenty, but still the percentage is low, but rapidly picking up. By 25, 26, somewhere in the middle of that, 25, 26, which is essentially little more than 2 years, in fact, you will see that more electric vehicles, two-wheelers and three-wheelers are sold than the IC engine. Four-wheeler would have established itself, though I won't say that four-wheeler percentage is going to be very high, even in 25, 26. Larger vehicle will continue to be a dilemma. Of course, there will be a push from the government for the buses, some buses, but these will be with huge subsidy. Basically, for long-haul vehicles will always be a question, should we use batteries or hydrogen? And that question, frankly speaking, is still not resolved. Is there work to be done? I'll say yes. For the officially chargers still not standardized. Though there is a de facto standard, 3 kilowatt, 7 kilowatt, 11 kilowatt, and 22 kilowatt AC chargers are now de facto standard as public chargers. There are fast chargers also, but these are 22 kilowatt is a fast charger. These AC chargers are now available. Basically, we have taken European standard, and today these chargers are available and these are being deployed. It is being deployed in campuses, it is being deployed in industrial complexes, it is being deployed in commercial buildings, and people have started using it. While there is still continues to be debate on various other communication protocol, but CCS2 is unofficial standard today. You will see most vehicles give you CCS2. Swapping is still not made easy. Lots of confusion about standards. We have been advocating that you require minimum standard, the maximum size of a battery, and the maximum weight of the battery. Even weight is not that important. And number two, the connector interface and the communication interface. But this continues to be an issue. Unfortunately, components for electric vehicles are still significantly imported. For example, motors and controllers. Indian designed and manufactured will be just visible by 24, and only in 25 we expect it to start dominating the market. It needs some incentives because I would say not good quality Chinese imports are being dumped, and I think we need better quality and manufactured in design and manufactured in India. Battery cells are today fully imported. There are a few samples here and there being made here, but nothing of substance. We'll see early cell production in 2025. Basically, the policies that has been done by Niti Aayog and all that is not a very open policy. They are actually going to give the production link incentive only to 3-4 companies, very large companies. Small companies are being left out. And frankly speaking, it is a small company which will make a huge difference. So we need some policy change. Packs are increasingly manufactured in India today. Again, some more incentive there will take it. Chargers largely manufactured in India. I don't see much of problems on chargers and battery packs. But battery cells, motors and controllers, still there is a big problem. Other electrification. For example, construction equipment, is it being electrified? Not much. I still see all of them running on diesel generator. Is agricultural equipment being electrified? Here and there you see some small things, but not enough. And therefore, the electrification will be an important in decarbonization effort. Leveraging available technology plus deployment of innovation will help in bringing down costs significantly. I think this is what I'm very hopeful. It's a matter, finally things are taking off. I think some R&D is required, not a whole lot. In cells, I will still see a lot more to be done. In a couple of years, you will see electric vehicles start dominating the market. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Amitabh, Saran, sir, would you like to add something?
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Jhunjhunwala. Excellent summarization of where we are today. I think a few things, just going back a little bit in history. I think India was amongst the first few countries of the world that had a production-ready passenger electric car back in 1999. Unfortunately, didn't do too well. Another statistic, there are about 2 million e-rickshaws in our country. We don't like them. I don't know, most of us sitting in conference rooms thinks of them as a nuisance, but they charge at least once or twice a day, every day. No one talks about chargers for them. No one talks about park and charge facilities for them. No one talks about financing. That ecosystem is working. It has been working for the last 5 or 6 years. We have to draw inspiration from that. If there is a good business opportunity, people will change and they will adopt. I think there has been dearth of good electric vehicles being manufactured in our country. Once we have that, and these vehicles can compete with their fossil fuel counterpart in price and performance, we are certain that this is going to pick up. In every segment, whichever segment you see, if you see the use case and that use case provides you with benefits, it will convert. Wherever you're seeing a lag, it's because the benefits are still not 100% clear. That I'm very, very clear about these things. That's all I wanted to share. The rest, Dr. Jhunjhunwala has already said. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Chaitanya or Mr. Varun or Ms. Prabhjot, would you like to add something?
Just to add, nothing much to add because all aspects are covered, but I think the infrastructure is has a great role to play as well. So we have talked about the components, we have talked about chargers, motors, rickshaws, and the market as well. As far as these electric vehicles are concerned, as the vehicles are important, the same goes with the infrastructure play. So both the charging infrastructure as well as swapping infrastructure. And the policies that we have been talking about, standardization that we have been talking about. So 2 things here that we see that chargers getting subsidized, but we do not have standards and policies in place for the swapping applications. That is one thing that we need as far as the country requires to move ahead on the infrastructure play, especially noting down that 85% of our vehicles are 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers. And commercial segment is actually gaining huge attraction in the electric vehicle segment. Almost 40% of the vehicles, the new sold vehicles in the LEV segment are getting sold for commercial usage, where affordability plays a very, very important role. And as soon as we talk about affordability, it comes to a play that the swapping needs to be there. And if we are subsidizing the charging infrastructure, there has to be policies for subsidizing the swapping infrastructure as well. And as and when we are talking about subsidizing the swapping infrastructure, that also comes to a question on the GST parity. So taxations, the parities that we need to bring in. I'll give you an example. So when we are selling a vehicle along with the battery, that accounts in for 5% GST. But while we are selling the vehicle or anybody purchases the vehicle without a battery, there the subsidy, there the GST is 18%. So legacy systems, you talk about any ICE vehicle, when you treat fuel as a fuel, we do not pay for the tax or the entire fuel, we do not buy upfront whenever we are buying a vehicle. So here we are treating the battery as a fuel, but battery you have to buy upfront if you want lower taxation. So some tax parity that we need to talk about, and bring in good policies in place where the benefit of the electrification also goes to the lower set of the commercial players, the usage, where the usage is actually maximized.
If I could also just add, Ashna, since you'd also
Sure.
Sure. I think whoever has spoken so far, Dr. Jhunjhunwala, Mr. Saran and Dr. Kaur, they've all covered very much on the technology and the industry side of policy aspects. I want to also just come to very much the government perspective and the government outlook, because WRI does work a lot with governments on this topic of electric mobility and promoting electric mobility. And we see a clear sort of flow down of policy making and implementation action from the center to the state today. The center has, according to them, laid out the groundwork. They've given adoption side incentives. They're continuing to focus on adoption side incentives through whatever has been reported about FAME 3, which is good to know. So they are continuing that vein, and on the production side as well. While there are certain, challenges in how some things were allocated, I think there was still a significant push given through the PLIs. And so now a lot of states, the center also sees that the onus is now on the states, and the states themselves also have started picking that up. We have some 33 states which do have some form of state EV policy draft or notified. And a lot of them are starting to take action, but I think a lot more is needed at the state level. And again, a lot more is needed at the local level in terms of capacity and in terms of understanding, so that they can actually promote the ecosystem. And two simple examples are the regulations that are needed for infrastructure. And this is at a state level, right? So you have the building bylaws. They had been changed at the center eons ago. Many, I think like 2018 or something is when they were changed and amended to include charging infrastructure. They've also been changed at several levels. In some state governments, the urban development departments and all have changed the building bylaws and said that this is what every new building will now need to set the charging infrastructure. But has that trickled down to enforcement today? Not so much. It's still not well understood by builders or real estate developers. And in terms of existing buildings, we're sitting on this sort of challenge that I think we all see, where you have certain electricity infrastructure, electrical grid infrastructure, you have certain sizes of connections, and this is especially pertinent for residential communities. We are going to see more and more chargers being required, but who bears that upgradation cost as the connected load increases? And this is at the last distribution transformer level that we're talking. And today, everyone is sort of addressing that issue by saying, for the first 5-6 vehicles, there will be adequate load in the connection. But uske baad kya? So the first 3 or 4 people will set up their chargers, and then, what happens to the next person that comes along and they say there's no longer any, additional capacity in your connection. And there are incentives that may be needed at that end as well. While incentives are being provided for public charging infrastructure and new charging infrastructure, there may be incentives needed for buildings as well to retrofit, to upgrade their connections in order to actually be EV ready. Because if we think about it, like 70 to 80% of our total vehicle stock is personal vehicles. And if, including both two-wheelers and cars. And if we want to actually start seeing them shift towards electric, then we absolutely need to crack residential charging. And that hasn't happened yet today. Because it's a wicked problem, but it's a wicked problem that we do need to deal with if we're going to have to sort of come over that hump. So, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else would like to add? Mr. Varun, if you would like to add something?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It's a great insight from everybody to hear whatever progress we made, what are the challenges we are facing, because I come from infrastructure side, so I'll definitely add some point. The first crucial point is from the power side, because we all are facing a challenge. Power infra is not, it is not only limited to residential area, even public area, commercial, public charging station. If you go there, you will find hardest time to get an electric power connection of any capacity, either let's say 30 kilowatt, 20 kilowatt for battery swap or charging station, and the tag to get that connection. So even policies are there. It is well implemented in terms of tabling the content. But when it comes to ground level, it is always a challenging for us. And we are facing pan-India this kind of challenge. So what I believe, the power discoms also need to get incentivized to upgrade the infrastructure. First, that is required, because every time we go, there is always no load available. And that infra upgradation cost come to any infra player, either as an individual I go to for a power connection, either as a CPO point of charge point operator, we go on that side. So that is the crucial pain area we are facing. Now, one point here talked about the FAME subsidy incentive on the charges. So that is also, I just want to make it clear, it is limited to only PSUs and oil companies, not a private operator, those who are putting lots of effort to develop EV charging infrastructure. It is not a straightforward, you same like vehicle side, you get a incentive when you purchase the vehicle. It is by default coming if state policy is applicable or FAME is applicable in that. But on the charger, if we purchase the charger, it is not coming. We have to follow a big route earlier, and now it is only with the oil companies, whatever incentive provided for 1,000 crores for the public charging infrastructure. So that's where also I think policy need to be very clear and fair, that if everybody is putting their effort, either private or PSUs, they should get incentivized. So these two are making a challenge for any infrastructure player to develop a charging infrastructure or a swapping station, and that is coming as a pain area for the user, because he is not able to get a charging infrastructure or swapping at his place, either in public domain. So I believe that is the current scenario challenge, and in coming days it will be there. Because when we come to any discussion point, we always get compared with the US market, Europe market. Oh, that market is quite developed. Their charging infrastructure is quite developed, but the challenges is quite less there in comparison to India. If I get to a land, if I get to a power connections, so if I have to develop, let's say 10-20 charging station in a 2-month time, it is difficult to get it done. So I believe that should cover an actual implementation point. When we talk about policy implementation, supports are available, but I believe on the ground level, still lots of clarity is required. Even we see that discoms are not aware from where to get the LT6 connection, what is the procedure, what are that special tariff for EV charging or swapping. We have to educate them, we have to spend good amount of time. So once that is going to, I can say if that is going to be, quite smooth, then my infrastructure challenge can be overcome, and that in turn give up people confidence to buy an EV. Like two-wheeler, three-wheeler, it's quite right now people are doing non-standard charging, so that's where they are happy. But four-wheeler, it is not possible. You always require a standard charging mechanism. So they are always facing a challenge. And same way when it comes to a larger vehicle, either buses, either trucks. Now that is going to be a real challenge when we are talking about 240 kilowatt, 360 kilowatt of charger, if that is required. So that time these points need to be addressed. And apart from this, I believe everybody covered all the points, and that is where we are in current scenario. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir. Okay, so moving on, I have some questions for our panelists. So my first question.
Comment?
Yes, sir. Please.
Comment. I think Chaitanya mentioned that we need to worry about the power infrastructure and whether that will be a bottleneck for charging. Today, 90 to 95% of chargers that are used are 3 kilowatt charger, which 15 ampere, which is no more than an air conditioner. Now, number of people who are starting to add air conditioner to their homes and more than one air conditioner, I mean, it does increase the load, and the power infrastructure, electricity distribution companies are well aware of that. It doesn't cause serious problem. Can 5 years down the line, you see a lot more and faster charger, and whether something like that can happen? Possible. But as of now, this is not a bottleneck. That's I wanted to add that.
Okay, great. Anyone would like to add something? Okay, so moving on, we have some questions for our panelists, starting with Ms. Chaitanya and Mr. Varun. I would like each of you to answer this question. How do you see India's EV growth graph in comparison with other leading producers?
Speak again, please, louder. We couldn't hear.
Yeah. How do you see India's EV growth graph in comparison with other leading producers, and what strengths and challenges are particularly unique to India? This is for Chaitanya ma'am and Varun. So
I can start if that's okay, Varun.
Yeah, please. I will come later. No issue.
Sure. When you say leading producers, do you mean other manufacturing nations? That was one thing I wasn't clear of in the question.
Producers both in India and international.
Sorry, but what do you mean by producers? My EV man.
She means
like
from OEM side, vehicle
Okay.
manufacturer side, if I'm correct.
Yes,
Okay.
manufacturers.
Okay. All right. So I think in terms of the growth story for India, so I won't focus on the adoption side because I think we're talking about maybe the manufacturing side. We are seeing a lot of interest and investments coming into the space, especially in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler domain, of course. I think we have some 40 e-two-wheeler manufacturers. We have some 170 e-three-wheeler manufacturers, a lot of them e-rickshaw manufacturers, like Dr. Saran was saying. And even four-wheelers, I think most of the leading OEMs have started coming on board with respect to electrification and setting out their models. Tata and Mahindra have started making significant investments as well, and coming up with their own born electric platforms and spinning off as subsidiaries, which is also again a result of the investments that are coming in specifically for their EV businesses. So we are seeing a lot of action on the production side. In terms of capacities of production, at least in the e-bus space, it's been a little slow so far as regards the demand, because the demand did come up quite well, and through the whole grand challenge process and through the demand aggregation for e-buses. Due to that, I feel like maybe the bus manufacturing ecosystem was not ready for that level of demand, and so it's taking them some time, but I don't think it's a problem per se. And overall, I think we are reasonably well poised to actually be a leading manufacturer and exporter, especially in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler space. But of course, in terms of value addition, in terms of our dependence on imports, there are still a lot of challenges that we do need to address before we can actually realize the sort of the results or reap the rewards of actually taking that forward. And there we do have competitors, and we have China, which is sort of taking a big lead on two-wheeler exports and everything. So I think while some of our later programs, while some of our PLI schemes and all do aim to address this, it does need to happen rapidly if we are to actually transition safely. And when I say safely, I'm talking about the fact that the auto manufacturing sector accounts for 7% of India's GDP. It is employing more than 30 million people reportedly, both in the direct and indirect sort of workforce. It also comprises of a large number of MSMEs, and these do not necessarily have the resources to actually invest in future technologies. And so if we want to ensure that this adds to the growth story from the economic and livelihood generation point of view, there is still a lot to be done. But I think we've made a good start, at least when it comes to setting ourselves up as a viable potential manufacturing base for electric vehicles globally.
Okay, great. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, over to Varun, sir.
So I think Chaitanya mentioned quite a valid point. So adding to the growth story, everybody knows that last year we have somewhere 1.3 million EV sold. This year, within September, I think 1 million units are crossed. So we are on a right track. And out of whatever we are selling are already sold, around 80-85% are two-wheeler, three-wheeler density. Four-wheelers and buses are quite slow, as everybody knows, because of the price factor. So I believe the major showmaker of this whole ecosystem is the price barrier first. Second, technology oriented, which Amitabh was mentioning, that we should have those kind of vehicle EVs in terms of when we are comparing to the IC. So price comparison right now, I think in two-wheeler, three-wheeler is quite comparable. That's where the sales volumes are increasing. Even incentives are helping that. And four-wheeler, but we have still, there is a huge gap. That's where demand is quite less. But now people are preferring, although most of the people, those who are buying their second vehicle is EV, not the, I'm talking about car, not two-wheeler, three-wheeler. And the buses, since there is it is more on the public infrastructure, so there is state transport and others, even public private operators are also coming on that part. So we are on the right track, but the problem is only right now is that whether we have that kind of quality vehicle, which is really going to solve the problem, or we are only just chasing the number and price value that is not going to help on a longer term. So that's where lots of things are getting done from the government side, even localizations, PMP and all those things getting introduced. Same way, there were lots of issues happening in FAME subsidy. Lots of two-wheeler OEMs have been asked to come with a clarification and all those things. So I believe if we compare with the global market, yes, global market is quite ahead. But if you see the volume, overall volume of automobile sector, and then our EV value. So we are in a right track because if you we are talking about NARDO, 80% penetration sales are EVs, but their volume is not that much, like a 10-20 million right now sales are getting happen. But in India, we are expecting that by 30% electrification, that is government target. But I believe it is by naturally going higher, somewhere 45 to 48%. So that's where year on year you will feel that sales growth, but along with that competition will come, because now all OEMs are in place. Everybody have a confidence on EV. Earlier, I think when we started, mostly Mahindra and Tata was there. Two-wheeler, three-wheeler mostly dominated from the startup ecosystem. So that's where things are quite moving fast. And buses is still, as I mentioned, because of limited demand, and recently because of financial challenges, there was a tender scrap. But now government is also coming with EPM Seva, so that's going to add a value to bus adoption as well. So what I see, gradually there is a growth, but yeah, we have to see the segmental wise what is driving that factor. One is of course the price factor. Second is the quality of vehicle with the you can say feel comfort driving, and that is also OEMs are working. You can opt as per your budget. Your models are available, even two-wheelers, even four-wheelers as well. Critical challenge, I believe, right now is the import dependency, which is the major problem right now. People are just from cell manufacturing to controller, even on the charger side, is still component level. We are dependent on the imports. So once that dependency will lower down, definitely we will be self-reliant, and then we are able to export, because now there is a huge demand from African market, some Middle East market, that they want vehicle or even charger from Indian manufacturer, Indian supplier. So potential is there, demand is there. We just need to fill that gap with the supply, and that supply is also coming with the both balance approach, price and quality. This is I want to add in that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chaitanya. Okay, for my next question, this question is from Ms. Prabhjot. So the sector is highly dependent on imports of lithium batteries, and moreover, non-adherence to the localization norms has been red flagged by the government recently for EV players. So which are the critical parts in the EV value chain for which we are highly import dependent? And what steps can be taken to address this?
Yeah, thanks, Ashima. I think on the EV components, though the local manufacturing has started to happen in all different domains, we can say chargers, we talk about controllers, converters that are used in the vehicles, the clusters, the display clusters that the vehicles have, both for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and other segments as well. And apart from that, the components that we use inside the battery. So we know cells, everybody knows we are importing, right? But when it comes to the lithium-ion batteries, it's a BMS. So more than 90% of the BMS even now are getting imported from China. And even if there are companies like ours who are localizing it and making the BMS, and there are other components that we are trying to make, even when you compare on the quality part of it, safety, performance, which is of utmost importance in every segment, right? And that becomes very crucial to address. But at the same time, we have to see that at what cost you are able to sell. So comparison is not only on the cost, on the safety, performance, longevity, the reliability part of it, but it also comes down onto that at what pricing you can sell those components in the market. So you have to be competitive when we are talking about that manufacturing, the localization as compared to what you are importing, which from the people who are manufacturing at scale already. So that's one aspect of it. But even if we talk about the whole localization in terms of the subsystems, like I just mentioned, motor controllers, clusters, BMS, converters, chargers, even if we talk about the local manufacturing of that, we are hugely dependent upon the chips, the chipset, every silicon device that is getting manufactured outside the country. And we do not have any industry, any company which is addressing it right now because of whatever. We have different issues in setting up of that manufacturing facility. Very recently, government has also taken steps. There are PLI schemes, there are other schemes that are coming up for starting to manufacture these chipsets. We are yet to see, and we are a little away from that. But yes, on the localization on the rest of the parts, it has to be done locally, and there is, I mean, we cannot bypass that, because as far as the performance of the vehicle is concerned, it is nothing but made up of all the subsystems together. And so far you talk about, I mean, till 2 years back, you talk about 98% of the companies, or you talk about most of the companies, right? Count by counting. So there would be a few, 2, 3, 4 companies who would have done the R&D in-house and made their products themselves. But for everybody else, it was like a black box. You buy a component, it's black box for you. For example, a BMS, we do not understand how it is programmed. We do not understand if the component fails, what has to be done, how to correct that. And we have lots of engineers in our country. We have I mean, one of the richest engineering resources in the world. And given that fact and their capabilities to manufacture in-house, we need to go in for localization, the component localization as fast as possible with a bigger, higher pace than we are right now. And looking forward to having the whole infrastructure developed here. If we want to have control on our performance, efficiency, safety of the vehicles, we need to have these components in-house.
Great, thank you, ma'am. Just checking if Dr. Saran would like to add something.
Sure. Yeah, I can add. So I do believe that OEMs, and I speak from an OEM's behalf. OEMs, AltiGreen is a different case. We manufacture our own drivetrains, the motors, controllers, DC-DC harness, display clusters, the battery management system, the BMS, the battery pack. We do that ourselves. But I think everyone here would be happy to know that there are a lot of companies in India that have actually started building these subsystems, and they're doing a great job. The challenge I see is one of discovery. Most of the time, we don't know where they exist, who they are, what their names are, whether they're any good or not. That to me is a larger problem. And suddenly in a forum, you suddenly meet them and they say, well, I'm making this kind of motor and it has a performance efficiency of this, and we're happy to supply you with samples. And you're like, dude, when this has happened, it's a fact. And this is happening. So I agree completely with Dr. Kaur that, we don't make chips. We don't make cells. We are clear. But there are a lot of components that have started getting manufactured, including on the controller side, including on the BMS side. It's not very prevalent. And I think everyone's waiting on that chicken and egg, the market thing, right? When the market grows, should I develop products or should I keep my components ready for the market to take on? I think as an OEM, it is becoming very clear to us that supportability is extremely key. If I have to fight the incumbents, we are early stage companies. If I have to fight the big guys in their own game, the only way to do that will be to provide very, very good service, very personalized service. So there's a lot of systems that you're building on top, around software to be able to predict failures or anything like that, right? And hence components and their access in India so that we can turn them around and fix them and all that is extremely key. So those are reasons why we as OEMs continue to look for made in India products. And I think as the market grows, you will find more and more companies coming up which are doing this. There's already a lot. You go to these forums and it's really very nice. I mean, lots of startups happening in this space. And obviously, a lot of them are also being encouraged by Dr. Jhunjhunwala and IIT Madras Research Park. I was in Climafix just a couple of days back. In fact, Dr. Kaur was there too. Amazing. I mean, the number of startups there, it looked like a mela, really. That's the numbers, all in the climate sustainability EV space. So I look at it as a very bright future right now. I think there's a lot happening in this space. The market will be very different in the next year or so.
Great, thank you, sir. My next question is for you only, sir. India's EV surge is led by two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and whereas the market like China accounts for over 60% of electric car sales. So why has the penetration of electric cars have been slower in India?
Yeah, I think, like I said, a couple of things here. I think India is a very price-conscious market. I don't know about China, but India definitely is an extremely price-conscious market. And by that, I mean, we all look for things that make financial sense to us. right? So everyone wants to understand why they are paying X rupees for something, and it's a great thing to do. So when it comes to a four-wheeler, we understood when we are looking at EVs that everyone will first look at TCO benefit. What is the impact that it's going to have on my total cost of ownership? And hence it is commercial vehicles that will pick this up first. When it comes to passenger vehicles, first of all, it's very difficult to explain TCO benefits. You are buying a car with a 500-kilometer range, and everyone wants a little more. Give me 600, and that car is now come with 700 range, right? You are driving no more than 34 kilometers a day. 34 kilometers, that's what an average passenger vehicle drives in our country. But you want a car that can give you 500-kilometer range because you may want to go to Goa one day. When did you last go to Goa? COVID की वजह से नहीं गए थे, लेकिन जाते हैं. COVID के पहले कितने जाते थे? I think there is a business case which is slightly missing over there, and hence the ramp up there will be slow. I think the moment you have more chargers available on the road, perhaps you will find more four-wheeler guys might also start picking them up. The standards have to be made, like Dr. Jhunjhunwala said. Will CCS2 become the default? Will there be something else that comes out in India? We don't know. So everyone's playing a wait and watch game. I think OEMs also on the four-wheeler side have not really created vehicles ground up. If you look at what has been produced today, it's mostly diesel vehicles minus the diesel engine plus the electric motor. You need an entirely new development that happens. I think some OEMs have started looking at that space and will probably be in a position to create cars that are more efficient, right? I mean, if you look at globally, I mean, there was Chevy Bolt, Nissan Leaf, very, very good EVs, but it took a Tesla to convince the world that very good EVs can be made. Only then the ramp up really started happening. So until that change happens, I think that change has to be brought about by incumbents. It will take some time before that happens. I doubt you'll see too many startups come in the passenger vehicle, in the car space, because it does take a lot of investment. And I don't think the government of India is going to write a check of $350 million anytime soon. That is what it took a Tesla and a Fisker to get started. I don't think I can expect that. I should not. So it does take a lot of money to create a four-wheeler passenger car. It does take a lot of engineering to do a two-wheeler and a three-wheeler also good, but not at that extent that you require over there. Plus, another reason you think about it, I mean, a lot of the two-wheelers in electric are being used in the commercial space. Three-wheelers are 100% used in commercial space. And you'll be happy to know that three-wheelers, 400 million people, 40 crore log, on a daily basis access the three-wheeler. So if we are making a change there, there's no harm. It's actually a very, very good thing because people are getting access to electrification. And if they like it, they will use it in other areas as well as mobility when they buy the next vehicle, but they need to get access to it. Right now, the only exposure we have in small town India is e-rickshaws. And those are not the most dependable. They are a good source of revenue. People are making money out of it, but it's like one of those flimsy things. Pata nahi, theek hai, chal raha hai. When they get good vehicles to use, that's when the confidence start building up. And market shuru hi kab hua, 2 years back, right? I mean, look at Dr. Jhunjhunwala's slide, 2 years back. And we are competing against a market that has been around for 120 years. So it will take some time. I think it's important to keep on moving in the right direction, keep on doing good engineering. This is going to be a long haul. This is mobility we are talking about. This is the future of mobility. You'll see a lot of things, new kinds of batteries. I mean, lithium, sodium, aluminum, hydrogen, graphene. There's a lot that's going to happen, but it's going to be slow. I think you'll see fast adoption in commercial vehicle segment where TCO benefits are very, very clear. In the three-wheeler space, TCO benefits are 45%. If you have good financing, you just go and buy it. That's what's happening in our space. And that's why you see this sudden graph. The moment financing started happening, there were good manufacturers making good vehicles. The moment financing happened, suddenly saw a spurt.
Great. Thank you, sir. Anyone who would like to add something to Dr. Saran's input? Okay, so moving on, I have my next question for Dr. Chaitanya and Professor Jhunjhunwala. In what ways, innovative ways, can India utilize subsidies that can encourage the EV adoption in India?
Would you like to speak first?
Sure, I can start with one, sir. If so one of the things, I mean, you sent this question across, and what I was thinking of is we've been having a lot of discussions with the whole e-rickshaw ecosystem, and one of the questions that came up there is, how do we move from informal lead acid battery manufacturing and informal lead acid battery recycling to a formal ecosystem? The whole industry seems to be agreed upon the fact that we're not moving away from lead acid anytime soon in the e-rickshaw space. While the government of India is hoping to do that and is providing incentives for that, lead acid is a well-developed, mature ecosystem. And so one of the ways we as people that are looking at policy, or the policymakers that are making the policy, one of the ways we can sort of mitigate that ecosystem is by moving it to the formal side. And there, lead acid is an established technology. So does it need subsidy really in terms of that sort of price gap or price differential or technology? Not necessarily. But like Dr. Prabhjot was pointing out in terms of the GST parity, if there is a way we can exempt or reduce taxes on formal battery manufacturing or formal lead acid battery recycling, then there is not that incentive to go the informal route anymore, because the cost difference reduces. And, you know, the additional burden that formal recyclers bear, which actually makes their the amount that they can provide to, you know, the people that are providing them the recycled batteries, they can only provide a lesser amount than, say, someone who's not paying any tax and sort of informally recycling these things. There you suddenly see that that difference closes, because these guys also don't have that much of a tax burden. So especially in some of these spaces where direct subsidies may not be what is needed by the ecosystem, there are still plenty of ways where, you know, tax subsidies, tax exemptions to make the ecosystem more competitive, to ensure that it is running formally, and in the lead acid space, it's a huge benefit if we move to formal recycling. All the sort of environmental and soil pollution and all that are actually associated with informal recycling can be mitigated. So this is one example that, I mean, I could think of when we were thinking about how we can use subsidies, or, you know, in a non-standard way where, you know, we're not just subsidizing purchase, but we're subsidizing along the value chain to actually make it more competitive and to actually incentivize formal processes and better processes. And yeah, so I'll pause there.
Yeah, I'm not a very big fan of subsidies. I think we should start removing vehicle subsidies. I think the subsidies that we require is in subsystems. Subsidize cell manufacturing, subsidize battery pack manufacturing, subsidize motor and controller manufacturing, subsidize charger manufacturing. That also for a limited period of time. Don't do it for too long. I will say the other thing that you need to do is, for fossil fuel vehicle, you need to start increasing taxes. I think that's another way. You try to start discouraging them, the fossil fuel stuff, by adding taxes there and reducing taxes here. I think largely one needs to do taxation rather than subsidy. I believe that all cell manufacturing, charger manufacturing, battery pack manufacturing, motor and controller manufacturing should be completely tax free. And including the input should be tax free. And start taxing the fossil fuel more. I think that's all that is required. We are already in the process, as I pointed out to, and I'm also a big fan of by the way, the e-rickshaw. Though I strongly believe that e-rickshaw should move away from lead acid battery. Lead acid battery, I think the cost parity has been done by lithium-ion batteries. Unfortunately, lithium-ion battery, there was a little bit of push cost increase 2.5 years back. Dollar is going up. That's another thing that's hurting. I think cell manufacturing we should do ASAP. By the way, I would like each of you, or any one of you, visit here. We can get into detail. The other thing that I would like incentives to be given is recycling. We should start doing recycling of every component of electric vehicles.
I think the market for that, I think right now everything is dependent on subsidy EVs, and there is no clarity on what happens to second sale of EVs. Because the first guy has taken the subsidy, what happens to the second guy? So it's unclear, will it be the full price of the vehicle? Though I do see a very, very interesting business case happening. The reason why I'm mentioning this is in context with what you're saying. Once you have vehicles that are moving, then you will need also components to be serviced and applied to. You would not want a new component to be applied to an old vehicle, and hence reuse of components will also start in the process. So the used vehicle system will be a big pick as far as I'm concerned, and I see that happening very quickly. There are already financiers who are asking for FLDG and guarantees on what happens if a repossession happens. So an OEM is thinking, what will I do with that old vehicle? So that leads to something else happening in the ecosystem and something else happening, and suddenly someone gets a business idea and it picks off. So a lot is going on right now, I would just say.
I also feel incentives can be given for converting existing autos, three-wheeler, to electric. There is a very large number in the market. They are not going to go away quickly. We need to do that. Okay, also, I need to move out fairly quickly, Ashima. Another few minutes at most.
Okay, sir. So I'll just quickly move on to the next question. That is for you and Dr. Saran. So can you provide some insights into the role of FAME2 in promoting the EV ecosystem in India, and what expectations does the industry have from FAME3? Again, you are not in support of this, but yes.
I think I'll let Amitabh talk about FAME.
Okay, so my views on FAME was that FAME was put in because we needed to get price parity between the fuel systems, the energy systems between a fossil fuel and an electric vehicle. The price of batteries were very high, and hence all the subsidies were attached to the size of the battery pack. $10,000 rupees a kilowatt hour, 15,000 rupees a kilowatt hour. So it was all on the basis of the size of the battery pack, and then you establish some parity over there. I don't know, otherwise, why would you do that over there? Now, the government of India has established a PLI scheme. Cells will get manufactured in India. I think 2025 onwards, I'm hoping that lithium-ion cells will start showing up in the country. And when that happens, I do believe that you will start seeing, a balancing happening. Fortunately, like Dr. Jhunjhunwala was mentioning, the price of cells actually went up a couple of years. And then, in the recent past 3 or 4 or 5 months, we've started seeing a little bit of a decline in lithium prices. I don't know if it's actually lithium prices versus the price of cells, because there's also news that there is some glut in China because of a lot of things that are going on over there. And because of that, subsidies going away from there, the market tanked because of that. And hence, a lot of cells available for India, Class A, very good cells, whoever has the money to be able to get hold of them. But as far as FAME3 is concerned, I'm a believer that, if you look across the world, I'm not saying they should be there always, but I think they should be extended till the time you get to either some kind of a stabilization of the market, which is another reason why subsidies were given out. And in fact, in the two-wheeler space, that is something that always bothers me. Why should two-wheelers have been given a higher subsidy? 10,000 to 15,000 a kilowatt hour, and then 15,000, not just that, but a 40% price of the vehicle. I mean, these are people who have money. These people are getting financing at 7, 8, 9, 10%, instead of a three-wheeler where this is for his livelihood and he's getting it at 30%. So I think FAME3 needs to create that parity. I think we do expect it to happen. I do believe that if it doesn't have to be at the extent where it is, we would want it to increase. There's a lot of money lying around for three-wheelers, and I think we deserve to get that money. By we, I mean three-wheeler drivers and three-wheeler owners deserve to get some of that money because it was earmarked. Now the market is going up. I think it is important to push that L5 agenda, number one. Number two, I think it will create a push in the market. I think there can be a way by which there is a tapering that happens of subsidy instead of just stopping it, number one. Number two, maybe a mixture of some kind of PLI and FAME, even for the smaller companies. Why should PLI be only the realm of international and people who can be international players? It should be something that happens there. So it's not about being dependent on it. We are fine if it's at a component level. We'd be very, very happy because we manufacture all the components. I'm just speaking on behalf of the entire industry and saying what would it take for the industry to move on. So a combination of perhaps PLI and FAME together as part of a FAME subsidy that allows us to, not only on the demand side incentive, but also on the supply side incentive.
Ashima, I have to get going. I have another meeting. I had marked ourselves to be only till 4. So will you allow me?
Yeah, no problem, sir. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you, and let others continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jhunjhunwala.
Thank you. Bye, sir. Yeah, Ashima, I'd like to speak something on FAME.
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
So first thing I believe is the first part is that FAME 3 should be more focused on commercial segment, passenger vehicles. Wherever we have the commercial usage of the vehicles, that is a faster pickup, and we are seeing that already. And that is where we require more subsidy to be there, and also in the adoption of the passenger vehicles. And allied to this first thing is the infrastructure management. So whosoever is flying these vehicles, some kind of grants or subsidies that put in their all efforts to introduce EVs into the market for commercial as well as passenger applications. That infrastructure creators or operators need to be subsidized in some manner, because there are huge challenges for erecting and enabling the infrastructure at the first place. So, and this is the push. So as in, if we are wanting that it be faster adopted, and we also know already, though it is like a revolution that is right now happening in the EV segment, but we also know that we are very, very much behind this electrification adoption of the mobility segment in India as compared to many other countries where it has happened. So if we need that push, this sector push actually would be very much effective in getting the private players also to buy the vehicles, right? And the second, of course, on to the component manufacturing. So if the FAME can introduce things that the more subsidies would be available for people who are using localized manufactured materials, local subsystems, local components like BMS or chargers, or especially the onboard chargers and the controllers, clusters. So more the indigenization, more is a subsidy. So if we can link that, that is going to be a huge benefit and a promotion of the Indian produce that can go into the electric vehicles. So those are the 2 cents from my side.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else, Mr. Varun, if you would like to add something?
Actually, I just want to add only one point, because we discussed a lot about localization, and as Dr. Saran was mentioning, lots of startups are there. So 2 points are what I have faced personally. First thing is that whenever there is a tendering kind of stuff, so first thing that L1, L2, L3 should remove. Because most of our startup players, they are out of that box, because it's not a mass volume right now we are producing. So that's where the price factor, some people bringing dumping from somewhere XYZ country and making it cheaper on a bulk buying and all those things. So that's where the PMP guidelines or localization contents are now in place, but is still not implemented. So that is going to add a value to the whosoever is manufacturing, either I am as a whole charger manufacturer, or either a component, because ultimately I am going to bring the component from someone else. So he is also getting benefited. So that should be a very crucial part to encourage all the local manufacturer, either startup or MSMEs, because they don't have value. So that's where they cannot compete with the price everywhere. Although they are making quality, but sometimes they lack because of these things. And I have seen these kind of issue. Second is I think we have missed out not a detailed discussion on the financing part. So when it comes to financing an ecosystem, let's say startups, most of the new age companies, those who are just started, they have a good concept and all those things. So sometimes they get good funding. Sometimes they are not able to acquire a VC angel funding. So whatever conventional banking, PSU banking or NBFCs are there, they should also come. I believe right now certain percentage they convince on EV or their ancillaries or value chain started financing, but not on that scale where you are making something innovative or adding a value. They mostly calculate with your balance sheet, your PNL and all those things when they try to support you. So these two are quite crucial because we have to see the implementation part. One side we are trying to develop, but if demand is there and demand need to match certain criteria, so sometimes people don't get qualified because they don't have either financial support or they don't have that large manufacturing scale. That's where prices are high, although they have a quality component or quality product. So these two things, I think, also get leveraged in the whole ecosystem because we are talking about future of India on the EV electric mobility side, where we are targeting to be an EV hub, EV manufacturing country. So that's where a startup ecosystem or MSME need to be supported on these two aspects, especially when it comes on the demand side. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. So my next question is for Dr. Prabhjot or Varun sir, you again. How do you envision the integration of renewable energy sources with electric vehicle charging infrastructure to create a sustainable ecosystem?
This is quite interesting. I mean, when we say that renewables to charge the EVs, though it's interesting and it's challenging as well at the same time, because we have to see that we are using a secondary source of energy to again charge a secondary source of energy, right? So we can divide this into two parts. One is a grid integrated system, another is an off-grid integrated system. Off-grid as in where we do not have the grid at all. So wherever we do not have a grid at all, renewable, of course, is the first choice. And there is no doubt and no hurdle as well. Instead, it's a boon to have renewables in place, and wherever we have the rural areas, tough areas to go, tough areas to reach, we can install the charging stations, we can install the swapping stations, and we can have, I mean, just by a decentralized installation of let's say 3 kilowatt or 5 kilowatt of a solar panel or a system, we are up and running to provide the services for electrification of the mobility as well, right? So it's that easy and straightforward. And charging your infrastructure through renewables is, of course, a good way to do, especially in the off-grid areas. Now, talking to the on-grid areas, again dividing into two segments. One is the area where we say that charging through the grid, where the renewable is mixed to the grid, right? So for our batteries to charge, electric vehicles to charge, will go a little technical to that. For any battery in a vehicle to be charged, you need a stable power supply. You need to supply the current that battery requires. So there is a stability, there's safety features that has to be enabled. Now, renewables, as we know, are very erratic. And they're, I mean, given all the goodnesses together, what is the issue with the renewable is that they are there when the nature blesses, right? So all the renewable resources, either you need to mix it with your grid to supply a stable source of power to charge the vehicles. That means at every place wherever we are putting up a charger, you need to anyways have a grid connection. And along with that, as and when your renewable is merged with, that is where you can have your economy of scales, you can reduce your the power bills as well to charge your vehicles, because at this point in time, the EB cost is higher as compared to the renewable cost per unit. Right, the solar energy is almost about at 1.8 to about 2 rupees per kilowatt hour per unit, and wind is at about 2.8 to 3 rupees per kilowatt hour. EB, we know even for personal usage, it is about 6 rupees per kilowatt hour, and the commercial is about 10 to 12 rupees per kilowatt hour. So going renewable is any day very beneficial if directly mixed to the grid. But as soon as we go in for pure renewable system, that is where the whole play changes, because only standby renewable systems cannot be used to charge the batteries. Only renewable would mean that either you are charging the vehicles during the daytime, if especially you are using sun, or whenever wind is available, if we are using wind turbines, or if we have to stable power supply, at that point in time, the batteries come into the picture. So here, what we are introducing is, we are introducing inefficiencies in the system. If we introduce a battery, because you are using renewable resource to charge the battery, to be utilizing that as a power or a source to power or charge another battery in a vehicle, right? So both from the technical efficiencies point of view, as well as from economics point of view, that this particular segment doesn't make a sense. So here, what are we going to use? We are using, though your renewable is now at a lower cost, some 2 rupees, 3 rupees, depending upon the kind of the source that we're using. And then converting into the battery, which is almost about 12 rupees to 15 rupees per kilowatt hour that you get, considering all your calculations, right? And then you are charging your electric vehicle, putting to that the cost of conversion as well. So that economically doesn't make much sense. However, going in for off-grid systems or the integrated renewables, that is going to be a very good and this statement to make renewables running on. I mean, that is a clear-cut example of clean technology providing clean mobility.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
Varun, if you have something to add on this.
Yeah, of course. So I think Prabhjot, you covered lots of aspect of that, but there are slight challenges. Of course, the real sense of electric mobility is green mobility. Okay, so that's where the power should not come from the grid, which is coming from fossil fuels. Even lots of questions been asked to us was, "Tum to thermal coal jala ke electric vehicle chala rahe ho, to fayda kya hai?" So that is a challenge with the current scenario. See, if you talk about, let's say, charger wise, let's say AC charger 3.3 kilowatt, 7.4 kilowatt, that can be, if you have a solar rooftop or something, of course, you can feed it through that renewable. Yeah, if we are talking about, let's say, direct feeding. Coupled with the grid also. But when it comes to DC fast charging, where our range minimum start from 60 or 120 kilowatt. So major challenge is getting that kind of infrastructure, renewable infrastructure immediately available is quite difficult. And that's where the capex involved, because you are going to develop a renewable source directly, which is going to feed. So there are two business cases. One, if you are having a consumer, means let's say your hotels, malls, those who are going to consume, then that is a business case, because your charger doesn't have a current utilization, which can, even you are producing 6 to 8 hours in a day, but your charger utilization is hardly 1 to 2 hours, and you invested that kind of capex. So that's where your unit economics is not workable. But if it is getting utilized for a household or for, let's say, for commercial purpose, your purpose is solved, because if you have to resell to the grid, that is quite cheaper rate. Whatever your investment you are making, that is not going to work on that. So that's where government recently came with right now you can wheel a power above 100 kilowatt. That is a good idea because power wheeling concept is going to give a larger boost to renewable feeding. But again, if I'm going to tie up with a developer whose minimum requirement is 1 megawatt, let's say I have a 8 to 10 minimum fast charging unit in a particular area zone, then definitely they can get utilized, they can wheel the power, and it is always cheaper from the grid, which is coming from thermal or anywhere. So that is the time we need to wait for that. Immediate, if you talk about, let's say, current scenario, there is hardly any utilization of any public charging infrastructure more than 1 or 2 hours. So that's where the renewable integration current scenario is slight challenging. One point is mentioned for the remote area. Of course, that is where the power is totally unreliable because we are facing those challenges. Even on the highways, I tell you, we are not getting even consistent power out of 24 hours, almost power cut off 5 to 6 hours. And in that, whatever available 14, 15 hours, that is also not a workable situation because we are using electronic components, so they are quite sensitive to the power fluctuation. So that's where frequent, breakdowns are happening. So kind of a localized grid or micro grid can be a solution. And then when we are talking about tier 2, tier 3 cities, these things definitely going to revolutionize the whole ecosystem, but it's a matter of utilization and demand because right now maximum demand is within the cities, metros, where grids are available. And second, I believe the other part of the coin is that government is now targeting 500 gigawatt renewable integration by 2030. So that's where our current, let's say we are having 21-22% renewable in the grids. That percent should increase to, let's say, 30-35%. So ultimately our grid will become cleaner. And that is where the renewable plus EV charging is going to add more value. But developing a dedicated infrastructure, renewable infrastructure is slightly challenging, provided if you have a demand, definitely it is the most workable commercial aspect. But bad luck is that currently demand is very less. So that's where it's not happening right now. Most of the people are, even we are forced to go on the grid side because we don't have one side utilization, we don't have one side investment capex, because if I'm going to invest for fast chargers, slow chargers, of course, making a sense. Lots of our clients who are using slow chargers, they have solar rooftops, and we have integrated that solution. So that's where, and for a CPO perspective, I come on that part because that is also quite interesting. Right now, we are minimum getting 7 to 8 rupees per unit of electricity. The moment we switch to renewable, it will, I believe it should come down nearly 4 rupees on a higher side, I'm expecting. So almost 50% of that cost, and that is going to give you maximum value addition to your business. So that is the longer game where we have to switch on the renewable side, but provided these certain challenges need to overcome in terms of one side demand, one side is how we are going to integrate that renewable. Well, maybe government target can be reached out where 50% of electricity come from renewable. Power wheeling could be a good option, but again, that is where we have a consumption pattern, either from charger side, either we have other amenities integrated nearby that charging facility. So we should not dump that power. But yeah, this is the future, and we are all working for that one day.
Thank you, sir. So next question is related to this only. So what is the current scenario of charging and battery swapping infrastructure in India right now?
You are asking about percentage or
No, what are your views on battery swapping infrastructure in India? How is it going to be in the
I
next?
think let me answer first, then Prabhjot will compliment on that. Because I'm from charging side, she's from swapping side. So let me first explain that. See, actually, this is a ecosystem, okay? And both are having their own demands, those who are customers. Let's say I come from two-wheeler, three-wheeler segment. First of two-wheeler, three-wheeler, they don't have any fast charging, most of them, except I think Amitabh is having Exponent Energy, so that is a fast charging vehicle, or long line batteries. But I think 92% are having slow charging. So personal user, to be honest, I'm coming on that part, even if it is a two-wheeler or four-wheeler, he always gets sufficed with the slow charging at home, at workplace, because his run is quite limited to 20-25 kilometer max in a day. If you charge any slow socket 16 ampere, 5 ampere, you get that done. Now the actual challenge who's facing is a commercial vessel, the commercial two-wheeler fleets or three-wheeler also, then four-wheeler. So their challenge is that they want to run more kilometers because their all earning is dependent on the kilometer. Now two-wheeler, three-wheeler segment don't have that capability because of pricing of the vehicle and all those things. So that's where swapping is quite easy, and because of lower battery pack size and all those things. So it is always recommended for a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, go for a swapping. And one other challenge which was mentioned because of interoperability, all OEM have different battery pack size and all those things, these challenges are there. But when you go on the higher battery pack side, like a four-wheeler, 40 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt buses and all those things. So battery swap become unviable because of a higher investment on battery, because battery as a service also going to come in the picture. Then removing that battery, then putting inside and all those things, these are the quite biggest challenges. And that's where vehicles are coming with the, all automated system. We require whole automated system for the swap system. So ecosystem will coexist parallelly. Right now, if you go in the cities or anywhere, you will find both. Two-wheeler, three-wheeler segments, they are doing swap. Four-wheeler always doing a fast charging, buses doing a fast charging, or four-wheeler also doing slow charging. And that is the where Indian infrastructure or EV segment is quite mixed. If you go in the foreign, mostly you will find cars, very rare three-wheeler or two-wheelers. So that's where only fast charging is quite dominating. But in India, it is an ecosystem where both going to coexist. Maybe after 5-7 years, when might be there is a, I don't see that in near future that two-wheeler, three-wheeler come on a fast charging technology very fast or in a large number. It totally depends on your cost economics, where it is making sense for four-wheeler buses, even trucks are expected. But two-wheeler and three-wheeler, which is having maximum density right now using the swap. So we both will exist. And we both will keep continuing on developing infrastructure. And that is where I believe user will feel confidence. If he want a swap, provided his vehicle support the swapping. Swapping in four-wheeler also can work, but you require that kind of value. Let's say if I have the same kind of vehicle, 10,000, 20,000, and if I invest on that kind of infrastructure, that make a viable. But as of now, nobody will come on a common platform on the OEM side. See, in EV, major differentiator is your range, and that is in turn your battery pack size and your technology. So that's where people will not compromise. OEMs will not compromise coming on a very uniform. Everybody has the same battery, same range, and all those things. So both will keep continuing, and I believe it's always a preference of a user, whether he can afford a very long charging, especially in two-wheeler, three-wheeler with the slow charging, he can manage even four-wheeler. But if it is a commercial user, definitely he will prefer a swap or fast charging. Yeah.
Thanks, Varun. That's a good perspective. So Ashima, I'm a little biased towards swapping. I mean, Esmito does swapping on commercial applications, and we are a full stack swap technology player. Especially for a commercial segment. However, I concur with Varun completely that both have to exist and they will be existing. And I'll give you a broader picture in a very small just sense that what is suitable for all. Let's start from the top end vehicles, which means the highest capacity of the vehicle. Let's talk about the HEV segment, the heavy electric vehicles. We talk about trucks. Let's talk about buses. What happens there? worldwide and what is going to happen in next few years also. Two things in every segment that we will talk. One is the slow charging, second is the fast charging. Now, picking up the HEV segment, we know that wherever we have depots, wherever we have specialized parking for these HEVs in play, the charging is going to happen for them there. It is not that anywhere and everywhere they'll park and they can use that. Of course, they need dedicated parking and they need spaces where either state government provisions or central government provisions, or there are very lavish big parking spaces where those HEV commercial segments, passenger vehicles come and park. So those are the places where these vehicles are generally designed to be parked at the slow speed. And when we take slow speed, which is something like 2 hours or 1 hour that they charge, in the same segment, if we are talking about not the long distances, but small distances like intracity. So intercity, it's a different story. Intracity, if we talk about the intercity part of it, for a fast swapping, fast charging option, I don't see that swapping as a kind of a thing that we would see for this segment at all in the picture. Right? Huge batteries working at very high voltage, and for swapping kind of an infrastructure, they would need a very, very big infrastructure in place, and that to putting it up in the middle of the city, one station, two stations are not going to be sufficing. So you need to have a network for that. So swapping in that area is a very big, as per my understanding. What might work in fast charging for these vehicles would be the technologies like pentograms on the charging side of it, for charging the chemistries, because we have to understand, you need to understand that the fast charging is possible two ways. One is the capability of the charger, another is the battery. So you need to have LTO or any other chemistry alike where you can have inrush of high speed, high charging rates possible for these batteries. So HEV segment, either slow charging, fast charging, depending upon intercity, intracity, and the kind of the chemistries that we use. Then we come to the MEV segment. In the MEV segment, it's going to be a combination of public charging as well as private charging. So HEV is all public charging. These are all commercial segments that we are talking about. MEV is a range of public as well as private charging. Worldwide, if we try to understand that what has happened across the globe. So you see, you pick up countries, Norwegian countries, you pick up Europe, you pick up US, huge infrastructure that they have been setting up for years, for almost about 2 decades that they have been putting up the infrastructure. Look at the utilization of the charging, the charging that they have. In the MEV segment, the best of any countries that could report on the numbers is almost about 16% of the charging infrastructure utilization. So in that segment, most of the people who are utilizing the charging infrastructure or the electric vehicles, they charge the personal vehicles at their homes. It is only the commercial vehicles largely which actually go and utilize this charging infrastructure. Then we come to the LEV segment, where this is a very, very specialized area. If we talk about India, right? So 2-wheelers, three-wheelers, and we are the highest manufacturing numbers as far as the numbers are concerned in that segment. We are the first production house globally. So if we talk about that number, that is where the faster adoption is happening. And that is where the commercial usage is very, very fast. So you see the amount of deliveries that we are doing right now, 1 billion packets delivered per year, right? So with that kind of the numbers that we are delivering and the kind of adoption in the EV segment that has happened, and a mandate that the state governments are having, that for commercial applications, they have to be 100% electric. Somebody says by 2025, somebody says by 2027, 28, and there are mandates that these guys have. So looking at that, you see it's not the question of the charging versus swapping. जो delivery कर रहा है उसका तो धंधा है, and that is what he needs to take care of it, that he doesn't need the downtime of their vehicle, right? Parking is a problem. cities like what we have, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, you see the where is the parking and the charging infrastructure available for these guys? Anywhere and everywhere they need, right? So swapping is a very, very attractive option for commercial segments in LEV segment. So for commercial application, it's swapping. For personal applications, I think it is charging and the opportunistic charging wherever the CPUs can provide. For MEV segment, it's a mix of it. For HEV, it is completely charged. So it is that we have to see the charging versus swapping as a game, as the unique offering per segment. And that is where the segment pickup, where you are playing, the whole infrastructure game plays a very, very important role. And yes, like Varun said, that we in the years to come, we would see a very large adoption of both the infrastructure types in play, the swapping as well charging, and they have to coexist. There's no way out.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so wrapping up very quickly, I'll just have one last question for all three of you. Does industry face some challenges in terms of customer mindset, which is slowing down the pace of EV adoption in India? And what are the most suitable ways to overcome them?
Okay, to me, it looks like I'm in a no-go now, especially that we know that people are becoming more environmentally aware, climatically aware, and they are not only that, but the electrification is also becoming a status symbol. So attached to that, I mean, especially like people like Tesla, BMW, Kia. So you see from the lowest end vehicle to the luxury end, that the buzz that the electric vehicles are creating, it is definitely a no stopper for the people to adopt electric vehicles. That is one, anyways. The second part is the way we can keep on provisioning the infrastructure. That is range anxiety had been a big problem. So companies like Volttic and other CPOs and the infrastructure providers like Esmito and others who are providing the infrastructure around them, which reduces their range anxiety. That is also one good motivation. The third motivation that is there is what Chaitanya and Dr. Jhunjhunwala was mentioning, that the mandates that the regulatories are imposing, that every building needs to have the charging infrastructure. Every new building needs to have, residential or commercial, they need to have the charging infrastructure. Again, is a good boost to motivate people for the option. But above all, in India and everywhere, what as the service providers, as the OEs need to provision to bring the confidence of people or the consumers to adopt electric vehicles is the promise of the safety, performance, and the assistance, the roadside assistance to these. So bringing in the finance, bringing in the support and services, provisioning the resale of the vehicles, the whole ecosystem that is developing now. And that is very, very intimidating to right now to see that the kind of the revolutionary business models that are coming into the picture. So right product mixed with the right business model is a good push for consumers to adopt any technology, not only for EVs, but actually for any technology. Over to you, Dr. Amitabh.
Yeah, so I think any business goes through a chasm, right? You know that, Jeffrey Moore, crossing the chasm. So there will be early adopters, and then there will be people who will take a step back, think why they're doing what they're doing, and then the actual takeoff happens. I think we've just seen baby steps towards it. The ecosystem has grown, I would say, extremely rapidly, considering that most of the stuff has actually happened in 3 years. I think right now there is, like Dr. Kaur mentioned, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. There's a lot of, because of Tesla, I also want to drive an EV. I think people will take a step back, will try to think, really, fayda hai kuch, am I just doing it because, that's the latest vibe happening in town? I think they will take a look at these kinds of things. Commercial vehicles will never look back. And more, and I completely agree, more and more, I think we should focus on trying to get those converted from two reasons. One, again, from a climate and sustainability perspective, they're the ones that are driving 100, 200, 300 kilometers a day. Personal vehicles drive 20 to 35 kilometers a day. They're not the ones who are massively polluting as much as the others are. So if you really want to make a difference in pollution and save people's lives, then you have to ensure that commercial vehicles are the first to convert. And I think TCO benefits are really ripe for them to convert. I think government has come down with a lot of regulations on battery and all that, which ensures that the safety, it has been brought to a completely different level. I think the battery standards are very, very good in India. I think that is true for the other things that are happening. People are realizing the difference between, it's not just a brand that they're buying, they're also buying value and features that they're getting from it, the support and the infrastructure that is available for them. So people are looking at it. The customer is very discerning. They're not just bhir chal mein kharid liya. And I think the best part about cargo commercial vehicles or commercial vehicles in general is that passenger or cargo is that there are no permits. So, everyone has a level playing field. So every OEM is out there. So you'll see a lot of mix of newer OEMs coming up with new features, new functionalities, those kinds of things. You will start seeing lots of different use case oriented vehicles in the market. This is just the beginning. I see a very, very positive thing coming out of all of this. Thanks.
Varun, sir, any updates, any inputs from your end?
I think most of the points are covered, and we all are quite optimistic on that part. And as Dr. Saran mentioned that, see, commercial segment already started. Now they have a clear-cut advantage of driving an EV in terms of first thing, major is operating cost. They are saving on the operating cost. Second, wherever they are serving commercial, there are certain target from the end customers like corporates in terms of their sustainability, CSR program. So already there is a demand, and that demand is driving to them to drive an EV. Either it is delivery, either it is B2B transport, ETS, or even B2C. Also, lots of people now preferring those who want to use cabs and all those things. So actually it is a one side demand driver. Second side, on a personal segment, it is a cost parity. What I believe is that personal segment, if it is a cost differentiation between IC car or EV car, the moment it will lower down, there will be a good value or adoption of EVs. Right now, what I have seen or whatever we have understanding that maximum second vehicle is EV. Those who are buying a car or something, not the first one. The moment it is the first one, that is the clear-cut picture. Maybe are achieve a milestone. But still on the two-wheeler side, there is a mass adoption already happening. Three-wheeler, although non-standard numbers are quite high, but they are driving that. They are driving with a lead acid and all those things, but numbers are making the sense. So we are on the right track. We are just lagging certain in terms of, if I talk about four-wheeler and buses side, cost is a factor which will come down with the localization, with the battery price and all those things. Commercial segment already started. And that is what I believe right now driving whole ecosystem, the whatever sales you are right now seeing, either three-wheeler side, either two-wheeler side, or even four-wheeler side, they are the actual, and they are running vehicle very much. Some of our clients are running from last 3-4 years. They already exhausted whatever the investment that is payback to them. Now they are making profit. So that's where it is making a sense. And now people are convinced. First thing is that earlier 2-3 years back, people were thinking, should I buy an EV? इसको लेंगे क्या होगा कैसे होगा? But now there is no question. It is just what model they are preferring, what their budgets are, pocket size. According to that, people are buying and moving at. So I believe we are in right shape on right time. It's just a matter of some more years, 1-2 years, when we will see a mass value, and infrastructure will also support that confidence, because range anxiety and charge anxiety is the I believe that is also slightly discussed because not everybody required a fast charger, as we already discussed. Most of people can suffice their charging with a slow charging point, 16 ampere at home, workplaces, and all those things. Commercial people require a fast charging. So it's not like that. That is a real barrier, but yeah, it's a mindset. People want, as Dr. was mentioning, that they want 600-kilometer range of vehicle, and within a 7 days they hardly drive 1 day, and that's only 20-30 kilometers. So still they have a mindset that, oh, what I'll do when I'll go on the highway. So that will overcome in coming days. I believe every company is working, government is working, and that's the confidence now buyers are having in the market, and that's where we are on the right track as India on the electric mobility mission. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Varun sir. Thank you, Amitabh sir, and thank you, Prabhjot ma'am. Thanks a lot for being here today, and thank you, attendees. We'll answer the questions offline as we have, reached the time limit now. So thanks again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so
Bye.